To destroy can be a creative urge.
Creativity is a gift of God, but it does not include destruction.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
I am delighted you have joined us for today's program. As you heard in the opening statements, it's going to be another interesting one. Call your friends and tell them to tune in because the town hall is about to begin. Before we begin the discussion, however, I'd like for you to meet the panelists. I'm going to ask that they tell us their names and a little bit about what they do. Let's begin with the gentleman to my right.
I am Bishop Michael Olson, and I serve as the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
My name is Andrea Luxton. I'm president of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is affiliated with the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
My name is John L. Peterson. I am a canon in the Diocese of Washington, and I'm canonically resident in that diocese.
I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church, Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm the Richard J. Dinda Professor of Lutheran Identity and Mission at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
And my name is Mel Robeck. I'm Senior Professor of Church History and Ecumenics and Special Assistant to the President for Ecumenical Relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. I am also an Assemblies of God minister.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being here today. As you can see, we have a great panel assembled here for this discussion. Today's topic is entitled Creativity and Destruction, and here's why. In October 2018, Sotheby's Auction House in London was shocked to see a painting sold for almost $1.4 million disappearing into a shredder hidden in the painting's frame as the gavel fell. Half of Banksy's Girl with Balloon disappeared in minutes before the self-destruction stopped. Neither Sotheby's nor the purchaser knew what was going to happen to the painting, which is now retitled Love in the Bin. The purchaser, however, continued with the purchase, noting that after she recovered from the shock, she realized she would end up with her own piece of art history. A video released later by Banksy, whose real name remains unknown, later confirmed that the act was planned. In the video, Banksy quotes anarchist Mikhail Bakunin, who once said, "The urge to destroy is also a creative urge." Banksy has consistently used his art, often painted on walls, to comment on political or social issues. This latest act, however, raises some interesting questions about creativity, especially seen in the eyes of a faith community that understands creativity as a gift of God. The panel is asked to consider at least the following questions today. First of all, do you agree with Banksy that the urge to destroy is a creative urge, or was this simply a criminal destructive action? Second question, throughout the Bible there are acts of destruction attributed to God. How do you understand those destructive acts? And then finally, when we accept God as the creator, does that change the way we understand creativity? That is our subject topic for today. I'd like to go back to those who helped to begin the program. We go back to Dr. Luxton and tell us a little bit more about this. This is an interesting case, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fascinating. And when you just look at the event itself, it seems to me that a lot of creativity happened. You started with one painting and you actually ended with another. So you did actually have a painting that was creative. If you actually look at the video to see the reactions of people, a lot of other things were created as well. And it seems to me that this is representative of the world we live in, where constantly we have the do-overs. Even when all of us, I'm sure, were involved in art or maybe sculpture of some kind or doing things, we didn't like what we did, so we rolled it all up again, destroyed what we had, and began over. You know, we do one thing, and then it's like, we could make that better. So, you know, like building blocks. Knock it down, start again, build something better. So destruction in that sense, it seems to me, Banski is correct in saying you can destroy in order to build on that destruction to create something. It's not that you destroy and there's nothing there. It's part of moving from one act of creation to another act of creation. Perhaps. But I suppose then my question has to be, is that just because we're in a fallen world? Is the fact that we're in a fallen world change the dynamics of all that happens? And when we see God in the Bible or the way Christ acts, because he too is involved in acts of destruction, say in the temple, is that because of the world that we are in and not the ideal? But I'm going to pass on to my colleagues to talk about that.
All right, thank you for getting us started. And speaking of getting started, we also had an opening statement by Canon Peterson. If you could care to elucidate your opening remark.
Yes, Andrea, for $1.4 million.
Well, it's worth much more now, a lot more right now, I'm sure. So, yeah.
Yes, maybe it is worth more than that.
Yes.
And then you have the point, so I'll quit. First off, I want to say that I personally do not believe that God had anything to do with the destruction of the painting.
Oh, no, neither do I.
Girl in a balloon.
That was Banksy.
And I'm also glad that you pointed out, you know, the whole understanding of God and the nature of God is that in the Genesis account, the very first words spoken in God's creation, and it was good. And it was good. It was seven rounds of that, and it was good. But then, as you also pointed out, you have Adam and Eve, and then the fall, and attributed to that is the destruction. And then the issue, I suspect, becomes how is God seen in association with that destruction? I mean, in the conquest, all these cities being destroyed, you know, so that Israel would have the land, etc. So you have that type of destruction. You have even, and then after that, you have the flood in which the whole earth is destroyed, and it's at that point that God says, okay, no more of this. I will never again destroy the earth, and the covenant sign for that is, of course, the rainbow. You also have, of course, as you mentioned in the New Testament, you have 2 or 3 examples of destruction, not as many as you have in the Hebrew scriptures of destruction, but you do have certainly the temporal experience, and the worst of all is the crucifixion, that whole scene, this whole scenario. And I forgot the Bethlehem, with the destruction of all the young boys at the order of King Herod. So you certainly have destruction in the scripture, and how then does that all relate to God and the creativity of God? It seems to me that we have to make a separation here between that gift that God gave, it is good, and indeed the promise of the rainbow. And that after that point, then how is the human element involved in that destruction? But I think that the goodness of God is absolutely critical here.
All right, thank you. Dr. Robeck, thank you for coming today. Your take on the subject.
Yeah, this one was a hard one for me. I don't know much about art. I know enough that when I look at something, I either like it or I don't. And I really like plein air landscapes. I'm not much for still life. I'm not much for, you know, anything else really. I have a certain kind of painting that I really like. But when I saw this happen, I thought, wow, what a absolute waste. You know, it might have gone from 1.4 million to 4.1. I don't know. To me, it was a waste. To me, it was not a new painting. It was junk. Okay? And when I think about that, and to have this idea related to a new kind of, or a new form of creativity, I can't do that. It seems to me that God's in the business of creation. He's the only one in the business of creation. He's the only one who has simply spoken the word and things come into being. He has created. We don't have that ability. We have the ability to copy. We have the ability to remake things, as you suggest. And there are good reasons for that. But we aren't selling those pieces of junk for the most part that have gotten sold here. You know, when I think about what John had to say about Israel and so forth, you know, there's part of me that wants to say, yeah, but the fall, for me, really is the response to destruction. That's where destruction comes from. And if God orders destruction, such as he did in some of the early villages around Israel, Palestine, there is a purpose for that. And the purpose is not ultimately destruction. The purpose is ultimately preserving what God wants in terms of God's plan. Okay? It's a creative urge that says, in order to make room for this, we have to destroy that. And that's a very different way of looking, for me, a very different way of looking at what's creative and what's destructive. That destruction ultimately leads to something, perhaps like a purgation, you know, that we have to go through in order to be purified in the end. But it seems to me that only God creates that this was not this was not something that God would have said, it is good.
All right. Well, don't hold back now. Thank you.
You know.
Well, thank you so much. And Bishop Olson, then we'll come over to Reverend Plumley. Bishop Olson, your take on the subject.
It's one of the most bizarre things I've heard of in quite a while. I don't see this as destructive by the very fact that his plan was to create something or make a piece of art. Really, I think something more than a piece of art, something to be sold. And the quote underscores the fact that this is more about an ideology than it is about any of the transcendentals of art. It became more worthwhile, at least something that could be marketed or sold, got some attention, and pushed something. But as far as uplifting to beauty or even challenging through depicting violence in its form to change or anything else, I don't see it. And the fact that the piece of art changed its name doesn't say it was destroyed. I mean, it was changed. It means it was finally created. So what's destructive about that? It's just a different type of mimesis. I don't understand it. I mean, you know, it got some good press.
But like they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Ugly people say that.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Okay. So, Reverend Plumley, what is it?
Oh, I really disagree. This is a great example of humanity as co-creators with God. I think Scripture presents us as co-creative with God. Whether you call it remaking or purgating or purging or that's a form of recreating the world that we live in. This painting was of this piece of art was of a little girl holding, and it's all in black and white, except a heart-shaped balloon that is red that she is holding. We have seen this before in a lot of different places. Okay, and the art critics were thinking this is a poem about or this is a piece of art about a sadness as this girl is giving up her something, you know, maybe her love or something like that. But then later art critics came along and said, no, this is symbolizing the way children have to, at some point in their life, give up their innocence. They have to, and it perhaps is even symbolic of giving up her hopes and giving up her dreams as she grows older and faces reality. The self-destructiveness then that went on at the auction fits in with that with the whole scheme that the artist is trying to talk about there, about giving up parts of our old selves and realizing that we are a new creation. In each day, in each year of our lives, we are new. And that's, theologically, that's terribly powerful.
All right, thank you, Dr. Troval. Are you buying this? I mean, not to say that it's not worth buying.
I am, but I think, first of all, you have to put Banksy in context. I'm actually a Banksy fan. I love trying to search out his artwork, and I had a wonderful whole afternoon spent trying to find a Banksy in New Orleans, and finally found it. So the girl with the umbrella. So this is what makes this very interesting. But honestly, he's a social critic. He does painting that's public, not to be privately sold. I mean, there are things that are privately sold, clearly. But here's exactly the point. And as far as obviously, it's art, so it's your interpretation. But because he's a social critic, I do think that he's also stiffing the whole art world, saying, what makes art that would be this valuable? You are so foolish to even pay this amount of money for what I'm making. Because what's important is the communication, not the value of it. And the whole point of The Destruction is precisely a critique of modern capitalism and how far we've fallen in the fact that we attribute so much value to something that comes out of the human soul, that shouldn't be sold. That's what I think it's about.
Whoa. We have two art critics in the crowd.
Either that or they're preachers.
It's very interesting. There's another saying, too, it's not only in the eye of the beholder that beauty is, but there's no accounting for taste either. That's another statement that you often hear, which points out the differences that I think are being reflected here in our discussions. There are some who get it, and they get it deeply, and there are others who don't, and then there is what the artist meant. And we don't really know for sure, but yet we know, based upon what you've described, that he has done other things similar to this. So, in the end...
Well, the artist meant to create something to move us,
Absolutely.
to move our minds.
And that's part of the art. So it's kind of like enacted art. And
that's
of course, it's enacted
Put
art.
the shredder into the frame.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
aren't there
absolutely.
places in the Bible where there are enacted prophecies?
I just think that this is over-theologized. We're taking it way too seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's serious, but
I think
this is
Bansky
just the wrong analogy, completely.
I think
Bishop
Bansky
Olson.
would think we've over-theologized
Yeah.
it as well. But I mean, that's precisely... anyway, we'll save it for
So those who are not theologians would see it completely differently. They'd see it from a completely different perspective. And maybe that's part of the artistic expression. It stimulates discussions like this. And Dr. Luxton, you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think this has been an excellent conversation because I don't think this is about money either. I really do think Banksy is a social commentator. He digs deep into what he thinks is going on in society, and he reacts and he responds. And so I think from a theological perspective, I mean, my perspective is that I do think creativity of an artist and so on, even if they're not coming from a Christian frame, I think is a gift from God. I really do think it is. I think it is a way that individuals have a capacity to explore things that are critical about humanity and the way we live and the way we do things. And I think really that is what this is about. And so in that sense, the destruction here is a small part of the creativity that surrounds it. So that's why when it comes to God, I would actually agree completely with John that I think God is about creativity, creation, not destruction. But I think this is something different going on here.
All right, thank you, Reverend Plumley. You wanted to add?
Yeah, just a real quick point about the second question that you asked us about Bible stories in which God appears to be the destroyer. I think most of that is pre-scientific understandings of weather, pre-scientific understandings of what goes of a lot of things that go on in the world, but making a theological point that God is creative even in those events.
In events of destruction.
All right, well, thank you. And then the flood was mentioned a moment ago, though. That seemed to be caused by God.
Well,
And you made the point.
But I want to raise a whole issue, which is not going to be resolved here. Why are we discussing God in this type of a context if this is just part of a painting exercise? Or, I'm not expressing myself well. But I would also like to say to Mel, particularly when he was speaking about the conquest and the destruction of the cities. That certainly is only seen from one perspective, and that's ancient Israel's perspective. If you were to ask the Philistines and the Canaanites about that, they would certainly not see that destruction in that way.
And on that happy note, we're out of time, unfortunately. I wish we had some more time. I'm seeing another program perhaps down the line, seriously. But there is an important announcement I'd like for you to hear. We'll be back in just a few moments for the summations.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you. Welcome back. Glad you stood by. We're going to go to our summations in just a moment, but before we do, I'd agree with Mark. Please send us a note, a letter. You can send us an email. Go to the website, learn about the Town Hall Estate, some really good information there, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Now let's go to our summations. Let's begin with Bishop Olson. You're first.
Well, I think that that art, the question of how we understand art, is really at the heart of this. Is art something that we enjoy for its own sake, that depicts beauty individually interpreted, or is art used as a means for some other alternative, like philosophy, when it becomes an ideology? And I think really therein lies the question and the difference.
All right, thank you very much. Kenneth Peterson.
Yes, I appreciated Andrea when she started being nuanced in what do you mean by destruction or to destroy. I think that that's a key issue here. For this type of for this painting, Banksky's painting, you know, that's one thing. But I would also want to say is I'm really glad that there was not a shredder in one of the great classics that went up in the Louvre.
Well, thank you. And then Dr. the whole art world thanks you for that. Dr. Choval, your summation, please.
Art is a form of communication, and artists are notoriously resistant to explain what it means because they want you to have your own experience with that particular piece of whatever's happening. And clearly, from today's show, we all had a wide variety of experiences that I think can be pursued on all kinds of interesting theological, philosophical, historical levels. And I think that he's precisely accomplished his purpose in doing exactly what he did. And I just want to commend him for doing it.
All right, thank you very much. And now, Dr. Robeck, your summation.
Well, let's go back to the Philistines just for a minute. You know, but my sense is that the Philistines have no business complaining, and neither do the Israelites, because God makes up his mind and God says, this is the way I have done. Why does God choose this people who are not a people and make them a people? Why? Why? We just simply don't have the answers to that. And it seems to me that God's business of creating for all of creation, the reconciliation of all things ultimately, there's a plan in all of that, so that the destruction along the way is something that he has to respond to, not me. So when I look at this painting, I mean, I think to me it's just a piece of junk. I hate to say that. I don't know Banksy. I don't read his stuff. I'm not aware of him really. But I would have to say there are better ways to make your point, Mr. Banksy.
All right. Thank you. And Reverend Plumley, your summation, please.
Perhaps the editors of this program could edit in some shredded celluloid or whatever material is used now, raining down over the closing scene of the American Religious Town Hall
as we shake hands.
And that would be a truly artistic presentation of the town hall dialogue, and it would add to it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Dr. Luxton, you get the final word.
All right, I've got to go back really to creation, because I really do think that when you look at Genesis 1 and then Genesis 2, which talks about relationships, you have this ideal of creativity and creation. And as John said, that term, it is good, it is very good. You've got that context there of something. But, you know, even from a human perspective, as we look at God's creation, we smile at different things. We experience it and its depths in different ways. And that, to me, is the power of what creativity is. And you know, there's some artists I like, there's some I don't like. Banksy intrigues me. I won't say I love him, but he really intrigues me, because I think that the gift that an artist has, the gift of a poet, the gift of all of these things, I think they are gifts that God gives humanity. And the way we represent it is just a microcosm and you know, of what God's creativity truly is. Had there not been a fall, would we have a Banksy? I think the issues. I think that the things would be different. Situations would be different. So probably not. Yeah, I don't know that you would have quite those destructive elements within creativity without the fall. But I'm not sure that you can completely separate the two, because I think, to me, creativity starts with God. Creation starts with God, and everything else that comes from there is just a further expansion and exploration of what that is all about. I pick up look at art or pick up a poem, and I don't have to agree with it, but I find its insights and capacity to explore things are really, really important.
All right, thank you. This has been a very insightful discussion. We hope you've enjoyed this today. It takes many different perspectives, many different opinions, and many different tastes to come to a program like this with this particular subject that we've been dealing with. Art truly is a very subjective means of expressing oneself. And in some ways, the town hall is an artistic expression, because each of us brings his own or her own perspective and point of view, and is able to express that in this forum, is in some ways some kind of creative expression. So thank you for being here today and for your contributions. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And so now, friends, until next week at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.